Hello, BookTube. I thought while I had the camera up, I would do a little discussion video because a discussion video that happened a little earlier has taken off the way I was hoping that it would, and I'm hoping that it just continues to do so. The video in question was by Splitreads, who did a video with a very simple question. Why are you on BookTube? And like all simple questions, it's fairly difficult to answer. It opens wide a whole bunch of subjects. And you could see a little of that. Insomniac took up her video and did his usual deep thinking about what that is, and also made a confession. Confessed that his own answer has changed over time. That he started BookTube basically as a marketing outreach for his potential future as a self-published author. Build a fan base, build a base of people who can spread the word, who can maybe buy a book, maybe vaulted onto Amazon's metrics once the time comes. And that over time he realized that it's also a wonderful community and started liking it for that. And Rachel Mauro did a response video of her own, elaborating on all the different aspects of Splitreads that came to her mind. It was a wonderful, wonderful video. And then Laura at Reading in Bed did a response of her own in which she linked why she's on BookTube to why she keeps a book blog, because she does both, and was talking about some aspects of that I thought were fascinating about how the larger professional book world doesn't seem to pay much attention to either book blogs or BookTube, and it sort of ignores the book reviews that are done in either place, and in her video, she wondered why that was, and I thought that was really, really interesting. And then the subject was brought up again by Cam at Wolfshot Publishing as the subject of his very first podcast. He started a podcast. I'll try to remember to leave a link to all these things down below, in which he talks about why he's on BookTube and gives answers very similar. He also is an indie author who's looking to build a fan base and who was originally thinking about that when he started BookTube, and has since, just like Indie Insomniac, and I imagine a bunch of other people too, has since come to realize that there's a lot more to it than it's kind of impossible. It's like finding a puppy. It's kind of impossible to keep your emotional distance when you're surrounded by all these enthusiastic readers. And I wanted, of course, to answer myself because it's a topic that interests me greatly. Of course, my answer would be community, as boring as that is. I had no wares to sell coming on BookTube. I had no none of that, none of the indie author type strategy in mind, and I also had a fairly rough beginning with BookTube. So the community aspect that drew me to it at first took a beating before it came through. But then I saw that it does come through, and that the community aspect is amazing. All these book people out there, enthusing about books and commenting on each other's enthusiasm and making suggestions and mailing books to each other, and it gives you a glimpse after glimpse into the reading world of other people. It's just incredible that happens. When I think of the comments raised on Reading in Bed, I'm a little more jaundiced to the whole thing than maybe I should be, certainly than she seemed to be, because I have been keeping a book blog for 11 years, Steve Reads, and I have a BookTube channel, but I am also part of the professional book reviewing world that tends to ignore both those things. And I think I know why, and it's a little bit of tough medicine in some places. I mean, for book blogs, I think the reason is the profusion. There's such an incredible profusion of book blogs out there that for the book world to notice them, the book world would have to research them. And who's going to do that? An overworked book publicist who has, who last season had a new book about Cezanne, and now it's her job to find out what the critical world said about that book in order to prepare a paperback with blurbs on it, in order to prepare an Amazon page, that sort of thing. That publicist, unless they're already a fan of the book blogosphere and not many of them are, unless they already know where to look, they're not going to go hunting through the book blogosphere for reviews of that book. And if they did, they'd probably find precious little. I mean, the book blogosphere is not usually about new releases, except YA. So for the book blogosphere, there's not much incentive for the publishing world to pay attention. And for BookTube, well, some booktubers are big enough for the publishing world to pay attention. But let's take, for instance, that same publicist who last season had a big scholarly biography of Cezanne. Where is that person going to look on BookTube in order to draw a quote, in order to get any kind of critical attention, the kind of critical attention that I agree is lacking? I mean, I love BookTube, and I plan on staying, and even so, I mean, I'm a professional book critic, and when I look at most of BookTube in terms of book reviews, I mean, you know as well as I do what I see, and it's not a pretty picture. It's the kind of picture that, if you're a harried publicist or publisher, and you don't have all the time in the world to research BookTube and watch it in the extent that the rest of us do, what are you going to see? What are you likely to see in a sampling viewing? You're likely to see the same kind of thing that all of my friends in the book reviewing world had seen and worried about when I told them that I was thinking about making a BookTube channel. You're going to see people who, well, to put it delicately, you're going to see people who suck at book reviewing. They do all sorts of other things great. BookTube does all sorts of other things really well. But in terms of an actual book review, it's a mess. For every one really good book reviewer, like Conrad at 7 Days at Sea, or David at The Poptimist, or for every one really good book reviewer, somebody who holds up a book and does it justice in a professional, comprehensive way. Like, for instance, I'll try to remember to leave a link. The videos that Jason Purcell used to do, the book review videos that he used to do, stuff like that. For every one of those, you're going to see 200 or 300 videos that call themselves book reviews and are embarrassing travesties. Now, they're not embarrassing travesties in terms of conveying the enthusiasm of the person who's doing them, which is the heart and soul of BookTube and what I watch for. But in terms of actually being a book review, in terms of actually being taken seriously as a book review by the rest of the literary world, the non-BookTube literary world, look at what you get. It's a mess. You get someone they'll hold up a book, a science fiction or fantasy book, and they'll say, I gotta admit, the thing that drew me into this book was the cover. It's so beautiful. Look at that cover. Isn't it gorgeous? And in the next 15 minutes, do they mention the cover artist? No, they don't. Is it easy to find out? Yeah, it's on the dust jacket. Just no thought of doing that. Or they'll hold up a book and say, yeah, I really like this book by so-and-so. They'll mispronounce the name. Is it easy to find out how to pronounce the author's name? Yes, it is. And I think it's the second book in a series, but you shouldn't let that stop you from reading it, because I didn't feel like I was left out of the story at all. It turns out it's the first book in the series. Would it be difficult for you to find out which book in the series this is? No, it wouldn't. It would take about a fraction of a second. And even though I didn't feel left out, I really felt like this author really knew what she was doing. I felt like I was in good hands the whole time. And that's great. You don't get that very often with this author. Mispronounce the name a second time, and also forget to mention the fact the author has won 5 Hugo Awards and isn't a newcomer. And that might be a contributing factor to why you felt like you were in good practiced hands. And the plot summary, you go on to the plot summary, and it's and so she's the niece of the ruler of the kingdom, I think, or maybe she's his daughter. I don't know. It's been a few months, and I'm going through finals. Well, okay. All right, fine. In terms of a BookTube video where we are on the same page as you, we like you, we've subscribed to your channel, and we're sort of following along with what you're saying, that's okay. In terms of a book review, it's a disaster. You aren't prepared at all. You aren't telling your readership anything of the things that the readers of an actual book review will want to know. Instead, you're just sort of flailing around, and you have larger points that you want to address, but if you're not buttressing them, then who cares what they are? Your fans will care. Your subscribers will care. But the publicist for that book won't care. The publisher for that book will look at what you're doing and think, well, okay, there's nothing I can use here. And there's certainly nothing here for me to take seriously. There's no original thoughts. This person is mainly reviewing which of the characters they would like to know in real life. That's... And again, I'm not condemning BookTube. I'm saying that I am on BookTube for completely other reasons, and I watch BookTube for completely other reasons. But in terms of the question of whether or not the larger literary world is shunning BookTube unfairly, the larger literary world is concerned with two things: the quality of the review and the currency of the review. So the quality of the review: is there stuff here that I want to use? Is there stuff here that no one else has said about the book, that's important to say about the book, that's well said about the book? And the currency issue is, if I use that thing in a blurb or in a publicity sheet of some kind, is anybody going to know who this person is? This is the first question anybody's going to ask. You don't ask that question if you're blurbing the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal or the Washington Post or the Christian Science Monitor or the Millions or the Rumpus or anything like that. That doesn't happen there. But if you get a lesser known source and you really like the blurb, you have to weigh those two against each other. It's one of the reasons that Open Letters Monthly, the online literary journal where I'm the managing editor, it's one of the reasons why we sometimes punch above our own weight in the literary world, is because our blurbs are so good that they counterbalance the fact that nobody's ever heard of us. But most of the time that doesn't happen. Most of the time a publicist who is harried and overworked will go with the standards, the New York Times, Kirkus, Publishers Weekly, unless the line is really good. Someone like that, doing a quick scan of what we all know is most book reviews on BookTube, is not going to find anything to use. And without that, you don't have the larger consideration, the larger circulation that Reading in Bed was lamenting BookTube doesn't enjoy. And that's okay. My main point here is that that's okay. The skill necessary to do a real book review is such that it would stick out on BookTube to the point where, if you're going to put in that kind of effort, better to do it on a blog. Or better yet, break into freelancing and do it there. Better that than I think the point I'm trying to make is that BookTube should concentrate on what it is best at. And so far, right now, it's not best at that. It's best at the community aspect, the aspect that I mentioned earlier, the aspect that most of us, I think, come here and stay for. Lamenting that Book Expo or the larger book world tends to ignore BookTube when it comes to the critical wattage that BookTube brings to bear is, I think, missing the point. That's the gentlest way I could put it. I think it misses the point. I think that it gives BookTube unrealistic expectations. We're not here to review books for the most part, right? Despite the fact that book reviews are all over BookTube, we're mostly here to talk about books with each other. And that's great. There isn't another venue that does that, except, that does it live, certainly. Maybe Goodreads. That might be why so many people love Goodreads, but it's more direct here. And I like that. I love that about it. But it's... that's my answer. My short answer to why I am on BookTube is to watch that, and also to do that, to be a part of that. You would think, since I'm a book reviewer, that I would be here for book reviews, and I praise book reviews every week. A batch of them every week, but I watch a lot more than that, and I watch a lot more than the number that I praise, and most of what I watch, it's great for conveying enthusiasm and getting across the point of your thoughts, but it wouldn't pass muster at the smallest newspaper in the country in terms of a written review. And if BookTube wants to change that, well, then BookTube certainly can. We add, dozens and dozens of channels every week. I'm sure that could change, but I'm not 100% sure it needs to. I mean, plenty of people have plenty of places to go for formal, well thought out, comprehensive book reviews. I'm very glad that there are some on BookTube, but I'm much happier that this is an informal place. I have never felt really all that tempted to do a book review on BookTube. I'd much rather just talk about books and enthuse or complain. But anyway, that I wanted to get involved in the discussion just to that point, just to say that's my answer to why are you on BookTube, for the community, for the conversation, for the back and forth. Not so much for anything else. So I'll let it go there, and I'll move on to getting back to talking about books in no time. Thank you, BookTube.